Hey Axis and Allies players, the Good Captain here. Welcome to my 8th video in my 12-part series on Axis and Allies Anniversary Edition 1941 setup. In this video we will cover Italy's turn. Italy is 5th out of 6 players to go. It's the last of the Axis partners to go, and though Russia and the UK have gone before this power, there's actually very little either of these can do to influence Italy's first turn. So we'll cover purchases first. Italy starts with 10 IPCs, and the most common purchases I've seen are either 2 tanks, 2 infantry and an artillery, 1 fighter, or my favorite, 3 infantry and save 1 for round 2. And just like in the last videos, there's a reason for this purchase that I will explain towards the end of this video. So before we get into the combat move, I'm going to discuss a little bit about the condition of the board before we start pushing pieces. So we are assuming that the Germans have conducted their G1 attack. And essentially in the worst case scenario, it could be what it looks like right now. A British fighter, or even worse, a British fighter and an armor could be left there. But the British have gone. So on their turn, they'll either take that fighter and sink this transport and fly off, which is 99% of the time what I see happen, and they'll vacate Transjordan. In other words, both of these territories will likely be vacant at the top of Italy's turn. And one final note before we get into Italy's combat move, this power is the smallest by far, but it has a lot of potential. It's the Mighty Mouse of all 6 powers, and played correctly, it can have a lasting influence and contribute very much towards an Axis victory in this game. So let's go ahead and make a few safe assumptions. The British very likely have moved out of the Transjordan and vacated Egypt. It's likely that the 2 units in the Union of South Africa have moved up to Rhodesia, but we'll keep that off screen. And it's very likely that the British Navy have moved off to the north to sink most or all of the German Navy that remains from the first round. And so more times than not, this is how the board will look when we get to Italy's first turn. And the combat move and the non-combat move are basically one and the same thing. Whether the Germans have taken this territory or not, the strategy is to move as many Italian units as you can into Egypt on the first turn. And when you pull units from the mainland onto the transport, it's important that you yank 1 infantry from the Balkans and 1 arty from Italy, then move them into Egypt. So that, in my opinion, is the most efficient use of Italy on the first turn. Now, whether it was combat move or non-combat move, the rest of the units move like so. Everything else goes into France. And the fleet, of course, links up with the Italian transport. And I'll just note that if the UK fighter was destroyed and the Germans took Egypt, there would be a German transport here as well. Okay? We move these units in the Balkans towards the east front, and finally place our 3 builds. And then we will collect either 10 or 12 IPCs, depending on who controls Egypt, for a total of 11 or 13 for the following turn. And normally I would say that's it and we'd close this video, but the best part about Italy is its mid and long range strategy. There are 2 strategies in particular that I will demonstrate, and the first one is what I call the Italian Naval Cavalry strategy. And the whole goal is what we've started here, and that is to open up the Suez Canal to get the Italian fleet through and leave the Mediterranean. Once the Italian fleet is through, there are a ton of options available to the fleet at this point. Central to this strategy is loading up the transport with at least 1 and up to 2 units, of course, and just keeping them available for a strike against the entire eastern seaboard of Africa into the Middle East to help out the Japanese. You know, these 2 fleets can provide mutual protection for each other and otherwise help dominate the middle of the board. And the other strategy I like to employ as Italy is what I call the Italian snake. This is a strategy that involves an infantry push that starts in Italy, wraps it around through France into Germany, to Poland and then on into the Eastern Front. It starts out as a trickle, just one infantry at a time, slowly pushing out in this direction, but very quickly you can get it up to 2 infantry. And there are multiple benefits to doing this. Once you've kind of got a string of infantry out like this, you can use them as a quick reaction force to any incursion into the Balkans or Northwest Europe. But you'll find how flexible this is when we get to the Eastern Front. You'll always have units nearby to plug a hole, develop a can opener to be used to support Germany, to react to amphibious landing, or otherwise provide a much needed boost in defense anywhere along the front. Stringing together your infantry like this isn't a strategy that's only available to Italy, but it's very effective as Italy in this version of the game. Now I want to discuss a little bit about how to defend Western Europe from the United States and Great Britain. Key to understanding how to do this is understanding the weaknesses of your enemy, and namely that the UK can only build 8 units per turn. This generally means that you will only see 4 British transports in the Atlantic, and you'll generally only have to repel 4 British transports worth of equipment every turn. And the same is essentially true for the United States. It's about 5 transports worth of stuff. But key to the whole thing is the fact that the Italians go between the British and the Americans, and if you have a nice snake set up with maybe 2 infantry pushing out through this whole area here, then the Italians are an excellent fire brigade to plug any gap that the British might have suicide attacked to soften up for the Americans. One of the most trivial things to do is to keep the Western Allies off of mainland Europe. It's so trivial, in fact, that as the Italian player, eventually you'll find reason to relieve German troops and get those German troops sent up to the Eastern Front. By turn 8, 9, 10, you want to see Italian troops really taking care of Italy, taking care of France, and letting Germany focus fully on Russia. There's not much the Allies can do to break that wall. Once that happens, there is a sort of game limitation with regards to these transports and how many units can be produced. And to take full advantage of this, I think the Italian snake is a viable strategy. Okay, so we'll do a quick recap and then close this video. We started this video by discussing the purchasing options for the Italians and why I like to stick with 3 infantry and save 1. In the combat/non-combat move, we discussed why the Italians should stack up in Egypt, and that's essentially so that they can work to open up the Suez Canal to get the Italian fleet out and do that mid-range strategy of what I call the Italian naval cavalry. Then we discussed how to and why you should create the Italian snake through Europe, and how to defend Italy, France, and generally all of Western Europe from the Western Allies. So this concludes the Italian video. As always, let me know what you think. Leave a comment in the description box below. Thank you for watching this. All the best from the good captain, and bye-bye.